Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Democratizing Manufacturing Data webinar. We're really excited to have everyone, and we're very excited that our panelists made time to be here with us today. Before we get started, I'm going to answer a couple questions and go over the webinar toolbar, just so you have an idea of how to ask questions and get a hold of the organizers if need be. So we will be recording this webinar and we'll put it on our website to access it at a later time in case you have to drop off early or share it with someone after attending. We will also be distributing the slides later this afternoon and any additional information that may be relevant. I'd also like to point out the platform itself. We're using GoToWebinar. On your toolbar, you have a raised hand icon. All attendees are muted in this format, and so if you have questions, please use the chat or questions box to submit those questions, and we'll get to them at the end of the session in the QA box. So please feel free to send them through as questions arise, and we'll address them at the end of the presentations. And then at the end, when we open Q&A, please use the raised hand icon if you have a question that's maybe a little bit lengthy or detailed where you would like to provide that directly to one of the presenters themselves. With that said, again, thank you for joining our Democratizing Manufacturing Data webinar. Today, we're going to dive into a supply chain discussion focused on how organizations can rapidly respond to future supply chain disruptions. We'll also discuss the importance of making manufacturing data available across the manufacturing cycle, removing barriers to accessing the data, and enabling timely and informed decision-making. With that, I'd like to introduce Emily Jerger. She's a senior project manager at MxD, and in this role, Emily is responsible for providing programmatic and technical guidance on MxD's research and development projects, one of which she's focusing and presenting today. Graham Immerman is the VP of Marketing at MachineMetrics, an organization focused on helping manufacturers gather and analyze data to make well-informed decisions. What's especially important to note is that this organization, in light of COVID-19, is offering free access to their platform for any manufacturer involved with the production of ventilator parts, test equipment, PPE, or any COVID-19 related manufacturing support, as well as to help companies produce new products, increase production volumes, and bring therapies faster to market. So with that, I will turn this over to Emily to get us started.
Thank you, Kim. I am excited to be talking with all of you a little bit about the importance and impact of data democratization on supply chain risk management and discuss a little bit about what MxD is doing to work with manufacturers to address current state challenges in this area. A publication that was recently put out by DHL's Resilience 360 noted that most companies are not adequately prepared to foresee or manage supply chain disruptions. Research shows that companies with limited network visibility to dynamic risks experience significant challenges in planning and execution, resulting in high economic and reputational costs. This is now more evident than ever with the coronavirus and the impact to global supply chains as a result of that. Many companies and manufacturers are not properly equipped with the data they need to adjust and adapt agilely during this time of disruption. They don't have visibility into their supply chains to know what steps to take. And many companies didn't have any ability to leverage data to predict these disruptions earlier this year or even last year, as we saw the rise of COVID-19 coming through China and other nations. We are experiencing in real time the impacts of not having data on supply chain risk management. And this will have economic and reputational costs for companies. This is very prescient on the part of Resilience 360 as they put out this report earlier this year. And we at MxD have been working with our manufacturers on this for a number of years. Though manufacturing is still quite behind in this world of leveraging data for supply chain visibility and predictive analytics on that to proactively go about mitigating supply chain risk. The root cause of these problems comes from a lack of easy access and proactive access to data. So that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit. The challenges moving forward begin with how do we rebuild from this crisis into a more resilient network? How do we prepare for the next crisis, make sure that this same impact doesn't hurt the global economy and supply chain going forward? So how do we proactively manage supply chain risk in this very complex and dynamic global network in order to achieve resiliency? Now, resiliency is a tough word people throw around, but in a practical sense, we know that there are benefits from being resilient. There's economic benefits to having transparency into your supply chain, quality benefits to your products, as well as reputational benefits for manufacturers as they're working with their customers. But really, one of the challenges we must face is how do we measure the benefits of resiliency? How do you measure resiliency? These things are not standardized and do not have a good precedent going forward. We need to develop ways to measure these benefits so that we can produce data supporting reasons to make changes in the rebuilding from the coronavirus crisis. Other questions that we ask are, how do you proactively mitigate systematic and systemic vulnerabilities to a supply chain before a potential event disrupts that supply chain using risk management principles? So that proactive piece, that before it even happens, you're already taking action. This is something that we have been working on, but it's still quite a challenge for industry to not just react in the moment, but in advance. How do we incentivize transparency through data sharing in the supply chain? So there's a lot of cultural barriers to sharing data and putting data out there, making data more accessible. Some of these are, of course, security and what will somebody use my data for if it's out there, and fears about that and lack of trust in that system. And others, as I mentioned before, are just not understanding clearly what the business case is for sharing that data or making it more connected for use by the workforce. Relatedly, how do we end up securing that data while it's connected to make sure that we are reducing that cultural barrier to transparency and encouraging a secure supply chain? The supply chain is defined by its weakest link, and that comes from cybersecurity and physical security. So we have to be cognizant of that, and how data sharing can put us at risk. And lastly, how do we leverage data to take proactive action? Data is just data until someone is able to act on it. So this is the piece that wraps us back into to resiliency and building for a resilient supply chain network going forward. How do we take that action or that data and turn it into action? Now, there are hundreds of solutions out there, technology solutions and methodologies, including data connection and connectivity, visibility solutions. There's predictive analytics solutions, cybersecurity, and of course, business process automation, which will help with the transforming data into action component. But a lot of these solutions are disconnected and don't provide the full picture for manufacturers to be able to leverage this broad network of data and transform it into action. Another root of the problem here is this complexity. There are many stakeholders who are going to be impacted by supply chain disruptions, and solving this problem of proactive supply chain risk management is something that requires collaboration from all of those diverse stakeholders, from planning to procurement, transportation, and both the suppliers and OEMs as they are involved in their networks. And this is where MxD believes we can really leverage our ecosystem of diverse collaborators coming from industry, solution providers, academia, and government to tackle this very complex and dynamic problem. But first, why should I care about bringing data to my workforce? Why should I even bother listening to the rest of this call? I would say that the benefits are very clear. First and foremost, reputations are on the line, and we're seeing this right now. The ability to predict disruptions before they negatively impact customers is critical to maintaining a strong company reputation. Not to mention that there are benefits to cost and operations to having transparency into your supply chain, bringing up that data into key performance indicators that can arm business decision makers with actionable information for how to optimize their engagement in the supply chain, make those critical shifts in their supply chain design as needed to save money and produce cost-effective products. In terms of agility, supply chain managers make decisions and take actions more quickly when they have access to complete and accurate data. In times like this crisis, if you have access to data, you are at a strict advantage over those who don't, because you are able to make decisions earlier and shift in directions that will provide minimum impact to your business and also provide critical materials in times of crisis like right now. And then also in terms of quality and sustainability, having traceability of things like raw materials or parts reduces the consequences of counterfeits and even opens up new markets, which many of you may have heard of in terms of having demand for things like sustainable sourcing and production processes that customers are looking for, having that data being pushed through the supply chain, even to the point of customers. These benefits are really what motivates MxD to take advantage of this opportunity and to help manufacturers grab these advantages while this motivation is very strong, especially right now. But how is MxD responding to this challenge in this very large problem space? We are doing it collaboratively with a team of 5 other organizations from our network. Back in 2017, we launched a project that sought to demonstrate connective supply chain solutions to target specific supply chain risk management business problems. And the team that executed this project was led by Dow. And we targeted a problem that Dow and many other manufacturers face. So I'd like you to imagine that you are a supply chain manager and that you would like to have a tool that allows you to predict supply chain disruptions, analyze the risk impact of those, automatically make risk mitigation plans, and then be able to communicate those mitigation plans and data to targeted users in an automated and targeted way. In order to reduce the response time latency from the point of disruption information to action, and then to reduce disruption incurred freight costs and manpower costs in order to achieve higher customer service levels at the end of the day. The problems that Dow and many other manufacturers were facing that we really focused in on for this project were problems of outbound logistics, where those outbound logistics for companies like Dow are impacted by events that current supply chain event management, or SCEM, systems do not address. Those include sensing and providing advance warning of events, and those events can be anything from natural disasters to major weather events or port closures that would impact delivery schedules. being able to objectively assess those risks and proactively mitigate that impact from that risk. While there are many existing solutions for supply chain visibility and predictive analytics and risk detection, these are typically not connected, meaning that manufacturing supply chain managers are having to go to many disparate data sources to find the data that they need to make a decision on how to mitigate that risk. Processes, as I said, to detect these disruptions, assess the risks, are highly manual and often take form of war room meetings, as in a number of people sitting around a table making a decision together over the course of an 8-hour period. And supply chain managers typically, because of the urgency of these risks, have to base information and decisions off of very little data. At the end of the day, customers are negatively impacted when the estimated delivery date is wrong or if they're not notified about delays early enough. So this team decided to create a solution that would allow them to bring together multiple supply chain solutions and data sources in a way that presents supply chain managers with the information they need to assess and mitigate risks systematically and efficiently. And they did this by developing an integration framework that brings in any set of supply chain solutions or data sources and leverages that data to produce action. So this team demonstrated this through proof of concept using 5 modules or data sources that were really connected to produce this and leverage this data for action. And you'll see a snippet on the slide here of a user interface that this team used for this proof of concept that allows supply chain managers to look at a map and in live format see their shipments moving across the globe and react and mitigate those risks in real time. The first module that the team developed was addressing the ability to predict supply chain disruptions in advance of the impact. So they developed a series of software algorithms that use inputs from things like weather data, social media, and traffic data to output a predicted shipment delay for a target shipment, say by rail or road. What this does is the ability to target these at-risk shipments and bring them into a risk assessment module, which is a series of backend algorithms for systematically assessing the risks for manually and systematically identified disruptions according to business metrics. What this allows a user to do is have a systematic and repeatable way for assessing risks that isn't based on just that one person's experience that they're bringing to the table, but is based on many experts' experience through a consistent software algorithm in the background. For risks that are above a threshold set by a manufacturer as high risk, those are taken to a supply chain manager who is the expert at this point in being able to take action on mitigating that risk. They are sent an automated email or SMS message on their phone that allows that supply chain manager to view all the data that was pulled from many different sources to be able to support a specific mitigation plan, view a recommended mitigation plan for that risk, and be able to capture then data about the mitigation action they took. That can, in the future, inform a more automated way of doing mitigation actions. So we're leveraging that expert data as a part of this and pulling that into this connected framework as well. Once you have all the data that you pulled together into this common database, you're able to leverage that data to inform higher level business decision maker decisions. We developed a dashboard that outputs performance metrics about the supply chain system as a whole to show, how quickly are we reacting to these disruptions and what are the most common disruptions, that kind of thing, which can inform more of a strategic decision-making decision. And lastly, this project decided to try to do a proof of concept of blockchain communication systems to be able to integrate relevant data from modules through a platform designed by Symbichain, which is a blockchain provider, to store that data on the blockchain in a way that keeps an immutable log of all of that data for future reference by key stakeholders, and be able to notify key stakeholders when risk thresholds are met for their targeted shipments or regions. So this integration framework is really intended to be leveraged going forward as a way to bring together all of these disparate tools, all these disparate data sources, bring that data together in context with manufacturing data specifically, so that manufacturer supply chain managers can make informed decisions. This was done for outbound logistics use case, but could be transferable to many different supply chain risk management use cases. And the real benefits that we saw here was to the response cycle time, which we defined as the duration from detection of a disruptive event to notification of that risk and potential mitigation options to a supply chain manager who can act on that. And this project demonstrated an over 90% reduction in response cycle time. Typically, for companies like Dow, the manual process to extract multiple data sets, manually assess those, have war room meetings for mitigation planning, can take 2 to 5 days to respond to major events like a coronavirus, which would take even longer. But this tool and this integration framework allowed Dow to leverage this data in a way that took them less than 5 minutes to go through this whole process, because they were receiving instant notifications about automatically generated disruptive events, be able to just take a couple minutes to view that data instead of looking for it in many different sources through one platform, and then be able to make informed decisions using that additional mitigation action time, and what they need to actually execute that mitigation action is not built into this metric. But that is a major reduction in time, and that reduction is going to enable those supply chain managers to react quickly and in advance to reduce that impact to freight and manpower costs, as well as to increase customer satisfaction. So MxD finished this project in 2019, and we are working right now on exploring next phases of this project and others. Our goal is to be able to push forward from a proof of concept, be able to demonstrate systems like this that can connect manufacturing data with supply chain data sources to leverage that data for action in the supply chain risk management and resiliency space. We also believe it's important to connect supply chain data up through and down through the supply chain using cyber secure data exchange methods, and we'd like to pilot that as well. We understand that a big piece of this is cultural change, and that's why we want to develop case studies from these pilots that are able to inform potential manufacturers and supply chain participants of what benefits they can gain by participating in a transparent supply chain, and what best practices they should use for connecting those supply chain systems in a secure way. And all of this will enable us to take next steps into future development, into things like virtual assistance, real demonstration and de-risking of blockchain supply chain systems, and be able to recommend future technology development in those areas and others in order to maximize the future impact of data for supply chain risk management. So if you'd like to get involved in this at all, we are looking to connect with subject matter experts in supply chain to develop our next project call on supply chain risk management and resiliency that we're going to be releasing later this summer, that's open to the public to respond to receive government funding to work in this area. So please email me if you're interested in connecting on this. We are really emphasizing the importance right now in this coronavirus response time of taking action on this so that we are prepared for the next crisis to be able to respond in a way that is informed by this data that we have, but it's not easily accessible and actionable. And with that, I'm going to take a few minutes to actually poll the audience here to see, get some feedback for that project call that we are developing. So I would like everyone, if you're able to either through your web browser or on your phone, open up a website called www.slido.com and help participate in this initial polling to help us understand what manufacturers and other stakeholders in the supply chain are looking for and the ways that we can have the biggest impact using government funding for this project. So I'll give everyone a moment to open that up. The event code, once you get to that website, is MxD data, all one word. All right, and then we'll be just testing to see who's in on that poll. Again, at slido.com. Please just fill out this first test question. We'll gauge how many participants are roughly responding to the poll. Looks like we have a lot of solution providers on the line. That's exciting, and small or medium manufacturers. It's good. Some nonprofits as well. All right, another SMM. Always excited to have you on the call. Awesome. Now we have some good representation from our MxD ecosystem. Give everybody a couple more seconds to join and log in here. All right, we'll call 16 good. So now for our first real question. What is the top factor inhibiting supply chain data transparency or connectivity at your organization? Please interpret this how you will. This might be for you or for your customer base. But what do you see as the top factors inhibiting this connectivity? This can be anything from cultural fears of sharing that data, how it might be used, even when data is secured. This might be, not seeing the business case for investing in technology and integration of this data in a way to make it actionable and usable by the workforce. This might be, a technology adoption problem where it's not automated enough or takes too much time to even gather the data. All right, we have some good responses coming in here. Got politics, standardization, definitely issues that we are seeking to address here, working with organizations and standards bodies to help leverage those standards to support adoption going forward. We have data cleanness. Now that's a big one. The ability to be able to take data and leverage it for action is entirely dependent on the ability to clean that data and process it in a way that we can use it. That's something we definitely experienced on our project. wow, lots of fear here. So we know it's definitely a cultural problem, and something we need to be addressing. Awesome. See a lot of silos and kind of insufficient amounts of data, and awesome. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes while we get a couple more responses. But this is a great demonstration of how much it's about the education component is equal to the technology component. How do we convince the supply chain to participate in a resilient supply chain, right? Like those have to go hand in hand. All right, we'll call that good there. And then our last question right now, what would you find as the most valuable outcomes from the upcoming MxD supply chain risk management and resiliency project? There's a number of options here. Feel free to put other. I'll just talk through some of them. We talked about pilot deployments of connected predictive supply chain risk management solutions. So having real world examples of how this has worked for organizations in supply chains and what the benefits they gained were. Having how-to guides for integrating data sources at low cost. This is especially targeted towards our SMM body here. Case studies showing how that proof of value turned out for different manufacturer profiles. Having educational materials and training provided to prepare the workforce to take action once they have access to data, as well as providing anonymized data sets from supply chain in the logistics of procurement or production data for use in research. Looks like right now, having recommendations for future technology development and demonstration is really key. That makes a lot of sense, especially given our high representation of solution providers on the call. And looks like those how-to guides are also showing up as very important here, giving clear instructions and things that people can take action on, as well as that case study for motivating it and providing that business case. All right, thank you all so much for participating in this poll. We'll be closing it here, and I'm going to be handing it over to Graham to take over at this point, but we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar.
All right. Firstly, can everyone see my screen here? I'm hoping yes. Thanks for that presentation, Emily, and thanks for MxD to have us here as a member company. It's a pleasure, to be here today. Emily's absolutely right. The value of data cannot be understated during this time. We have on our hands a whole new arsenal of data to drive decisions with. And in an increasingly complex manufacturing environment, manufacturers are really looking for any edge they can get to remain competitive in what is a heavily globalized economy, as well as opportunities to build a more sustainable, resilient economy for the future. Before I get started, I just wanted to note again that we are launching a COVID response program to provide our platform and consulting services for free for any manufacturer involved in the production or ventilator parts production, test equipment, protective equipment, or any other COVID-related support, because our platform is plug and play with no on-site integration required. Any factory can connect their machines in a matter of minutes just to get started. Before my agenda today is to tell you a bit about what we've built at MachineMetrics and then present some of our ideas on enabling democratization of manufacturing data. To have some context, just a bit about us. MachineMetrics is manufacturing's industrial IoT platform for machines. MachineMetrics is accelerating manufacturing's digital transformation by providing an intuitive and flexible platform to easily connect, collect, and transform data from any piece of discrete equipment into powerful, actionable applications that reduce machine downtime, increase your throughput, and the profitability driven through your manufacturing equipment. So right now, hundreds of manufacturers have connected thousands of machines to our platform globally. And our platform is enabling these companies to deliver that information to the right person at the right time to improve their machine performance, increase their capacity utilization, and ultimately win more business to remain globally competitive. With MachineMetrics, manufacturers can significantly expedite their time to value with Industry 4.0 implementations by putting their data to work immediately and provide a foundation for scaling that data across their operations while prioritizing their internal resources, not towards rebuilding the wheel, but instead their own competencies to unlock the value of this technology. But enough about us. We're really here to talk about data democratization, which in many ways is the enablement of focusing priorities on your own competencies. Until recently, data was generally owned by data scientists and IT departments. Business units like marketing, business analysts, executives use data to make business decisions, but they always had to go through these siloed sources to get that data. This is the way it's been for the better part of 5 decades, and there are still many companies that operate in this fashion today. As we all know, data is critical, as is companies' ability to manage it effectively. While manufacturers are making strides in this area, most focus on data within their companies and have difficulty maximizing their return on investment and driving innovation at scale. So manufacturing remains the largest industry in the world with the least digitization. The reality is that smart manufacturing is still highly constrained. While IoT and the increasing number of automations, robotics, machines, and process platforms add some semblance of local value, it's significantly increasing complexities within factories, supply chains, and making this data somewhat difficult to use. Predictive analytics, advanced diagnostics, critical pathways, if you will, to spurring economic benefit are constrained by a lack of access to good data. And those tools and expertise to produce good data oftentimes are too complex or even too expensive for most companies to even consider. And the data doesn't lie. MachineMetrics, we stream data live off thousands of machines across the United States and globally. And we've covering all geographics, size of companies, major industries. And we've collected data from over 1 billion parts and have a statistically significant sample size. And we can tell you that today, machines are generally utilized between 1/4 to 1/3 of their actual capacity. Even worse, the failure rate of Industry 4.0 implementations, fail at a 76% rate, something that we're going to discuss a little bit later. But what is the solution to these problems? Well, enter the concept of data democratization, right? The goal is to enable anybody to use data at any time to make a decision with no barriers to access or to understanding. So from small, medium, large manufacturers, operators, operations, supply chain, IT leaderships, equipment builders, education and training, everyone stands to gain from new technologies and data-driven insights. By enabling data to flow freely between systems, legacy business models and operational structures will transform into more horizontal, flexible, agile businesses, more readily capable of being connected to a larger partner ecosystem. This newfound ability to focus on what everybody does best will reveal opportunities for a more sustainable, resilient economy. Easy, right? Just kidding. How do we do that, right? How does how does the economy do that, and how does certain aspects of the manufacturing life cycle do it? MxD did a really cool job of kind of showing in one way how democratizing supply chain data can create a more resilient logistics approach. At MachineMetrics, our focus is on manufacturing equipment. And the machine data component of the digital factory. So for this presentation, we're really focusing on a three-step approach to maximize the value that can be driven with machine data democratization. These three steps, starting with step one, a common data infrastructure, enabling any Industry 4.0 initiative really starts with data infrastructure. And to provide effective tools for analyzing that data, the data must first be transformed to a common data model. It's like if we're trying to measure each other's heights and I'm measuring in inches, you're measuring in centimeters, and my friend is measuring in foot lengths, it's very difficult to compare those three variables. So that transformation of data into a common data model is essential. Step two, all that data needs to be aggregated and accessible and extensible from one centralized platform. And step three, from that platform, this data needs to drive applications and integrations. So transform that data into action to deliver that right information to the right person, the right consumer, if you will, at the right time, so they can enable value with it. The foundation, in context to what we do specifically, the foundation of MachineMetrics platform is the automated capture, transformation, contextualization of machine data. So this capacity enables consumable machine data and insights in a matter of minutes. We largely capture data directly from the control of the machine, bypassing the need for additional sensors to provide a more scalable solution that can be self-integrated by our customers. And our platform features dozens of custom software adapters to unlock, map out, collect, and standardize those available data points. So from when it comes down to machines as a first step, that problem we solve. All that data, right, that is then relayed into a central network server in the cloud, right? And this is where data is gathered and processed in that centralized location in part two of the strategy. Once data is processed in the cloud or analyzed, if you will, it can immediately be accessed through an IoT platform, such as MachineMetrics in this case, in a number of ways via a number of data consumers, whether it be through real-time visualization, reporting, diagnostic analytics to help improve decision-making ability based on that real data. So having that centralized location is essential. And then third, once those two steps are in place, anyone can take advantage of their deep domain expertise to transform that data into applications. Because we enable the manufacturer and by extension their ecosystem of partners to optimize key processes, and they can create new innovative applications through their expertise in operations, whether that's analytics, like machine learning and AI algorithms that can be developed and applied both at the edge or in the cloud. And these alignment of skills and focused knowledge and the technology that enables is an optimal formula for rapid and continuous value creation for the end user, which in the end is the manufacturer. By facilitating an ecosystem of out-of-the-box use cases, custom apps, and integrations, the time to value and need for DIY IoT on top of data is greatly reduced, which really empowers companies to drive the new process optimizations, which is in the end the goal, right? Actionability. It's something that Emily had harked on a lot during her presentation, and she's absolutely right that that's the end goal. So what do those applications look like in the end, right? Well, one of the first ones that we look at is factory optimization and workforce empowerment. At the factory level, data is often siloed and only accessible to various consumers, traditionally restricted, like we said earlier, to data analysts, data scientists, and who have the skills and understanding to interpret that data. But unfortunately, that's not a scalable solution for just data scientists and analysts to use data. Organizations need time to hire talent, right, like that. And there's an undeniably high demand for these types of skilled employees. For any of you who've tried to hire an excellent data scientist, which might hinder a manufacturer's effort to become more data-driven, right? So one way of alleviating this talent bottleneck is through democratizing data. Organizations are increasingly realizing that the data needs to be used by more users within the enterprise. All employees, really, even the non-technical end users, can easily access and understand data to make informed decisions quickly, to uncover opportunities for the business to improve. A couple ways that we personally take that on, but are more just anecdotal examples, is MachineMetrics takes that machine data and delivers it to operators through a tablet interface. Operators have in previous models kind of been an afterthought of data, but by democratizing data to operators, they're able to number one, provide human context to the machine data that we collect, so we can understand bottlenecks in process, in setup, or in other machining processes, but are also able to do their job more efficiently and become part of the continuous improvement process. Our system also provides transparency across the factory floor. For example, dashboards that show utilization of equipment or downtime or any other report can be quite revealing of what's happening right now and provide immediate value from that visibility. We find that our customers, oftentimes because they now have that more democratized access to data, bring in more people to the process of continuous improvement and actually, provide morning scrums around data, right? And in times where maybe it was just, a top-down approach to implementation. Using MachineMetrics, we also enable our customers to merge those insights with what we call workflows, essentially processes of what to do with insights, with analytics, and that can be delivered to various consumers to take action. This is something that we think is very important. It's not just the data scientist that builds the algorithm, but in reality, you need to deliver systems that take that data and kick off, that's kicked off maybe by an algorithmic insight, or a machine learning algorithm, and deliver that information, whether it's from the monitoring of performance or a conditional data point from the machine, and let that right person know at the right time, not just what's happening, but what is exactly they can do about what is happening to take corrective or preventative action that in the end delivers an action to improve the process. By democratizing data in these ways, more employees with diverse expertise will become more empowered to make data-driven decisions in the process, which indirectly helps improve your business's agility. One of the other ways that we look at data democratization from a company standpoint is in leveraging aggregate data for benchmarking and industry trend analytics. At the industry level, data from manufacturing continues to be siloed by individual companies, which either keeps that data to themselves, but the aggregate tells interesting stories about the industry and about your place within the industry. So by democratizing manufacturing data, it provides an opportunity to drive value across numerous industries and levels of business to improve decision making, not just in the factory level, but on industry level as well as to fuel insights into what is coming next. Because MachineMetrics is a multi-tenant cloud platform, we can provide examples of what that democratization of data looks like for machine data, for example, that machine data component of the digital factory. For example, we release benchmarking reports to our customers who can now see how they're doing against their peers and segment that data from type of machining or even industry type. So in a month where there's maybe a blip in sales, knowing where you stand, or if you're planning on insourcing manufacturing as part of your process to more verticalize your business, or it's just focusing your efforts on a certain part of your business. This type of data is paramount to making those types of decisions. Another example is when you look at data for industry trends. For example, at the machine level, we're able to derive insights, year over year, or month over month, or even day over day, for specific trends for machining types. And this data comes specifically from our state of the industry from last year. For example, if you take a look at this data, grinder usage was especially high performance. Utilization for most machine types vary approximately, just depending on certain performance. This graph, at least what you can see, reflects a slowdown in manufacturing over that past year. And a shop owner could learn a lot about their own machines and operations by comparing against these aggregate patterns. Digging into the data just a little bit deeper, looking at even more unique insights, a shop owner or a factory owner or a business can get immediate sense of how competitive they are just by learning where they fall within these larger aggregate data trends. For example, using downtime benchmarks to inform your business planning practice. Perhaps you have a disproportionate amount of downtime due to changeovers compared to the industry. Consider analyzing ways in which this data could be better streamlined to better align with industry standards. Lastly, looking at machine data across time revealed industry-wide trends. One of the most basic questions that we can ask is, on what days of the year are manufacturers actually up and running? So, we're able to provide insights like that as well. But on even higher level, our data has been able to track alongside correlates for economic indicators, including industrial production for miscellaneous metal goods, medical device manufacturing, or even value of manufacturer shipments for motor vehicle components. So when you look at data at a larger scale, you can see that the value that it can have, not just at the machine level or even the factory level, but across your business to better inform, scheduling, equipment purchases, supply chain use cases, and so on and so forth. Speaking of supply chain, obviously this was well covered by MxD, but kind of where we fit into this model, being able to track products along that value supply chain and having that visibility into the manufacturing processes can make sure that materials are well stocked or reordered when needed. Visibility into the supply chain allows manufacturers to improve their production planning, reduce inventory levels, and react faster to unexpected events within that supply chain. When you combine data like what we collect into a more democratized data system, it would benefit all supply chain participants by allowing them to reduce inventory and provide safety buffer zones and react to unexpected events. For example, I'm going to try to get to the end of this because I know that we were running a little bit further behind, so forgive me. But this is a paradigm of what that model looks like, and I will send out these slides after the presentation, so you'll have a chance to review them. But as we said before, that paradigm of supply chain visibility also feeds into use cases that have been adopted within other industries, such as a service models. So for example, it's not to optimize the operation of equipment. It's not just the manufacturer who needs this data, but in fact, all who partake in the operation of the machine. So when we talk about democratizing data, it's not just within an organization or even within an organization relative to industry, but it's across the supply chain, even at the machine level, whether it's the machine builder, the distributors, or the service and the parts providers, systems and system integrators, and even consultants and financial firms. The move to as-a-service models for manufacturers requires a fundamental change in a new way of thinking for both the OEMs, the tiers of manufacturers, to drive new revenue streams and increased innovation. For machine tools, for example, which is the space that we operate most in, MachineMetrics enables that real-time access to data from production equipment to OEMs, so they can drive use cases like remote service, including, which has never been more important in times such as now, when factory maintenance is almost impossible, to be able to help their customers get their machines back up and running. But also suggest use and utilization options based on the manufacturer's unique processes, identification of optimal changeover sequences, optimal tooling, as well as other value-added services. Those value-added services may include something that Emily intimated as well, which was predictive maintenance. And in order to build, predictive maintenance models, manufacturers need clarity on the specific variables that they're collecting and how to leverage these variables and their unique behaviors across the factory. And it's absolutely key to have accurate domain knowledge about each specific machine and a strong data set to enable these types of use cases. In a more democratized platform model, such as what MachineMetrics has built, manufacturers can leverage their own unique knowledge of machines, or in some of these other cases, work directly with their machine tool builders, their tooling manufacturers, their grinding wheel companies, or any other component provider of the machine to leverage their unique knowledge and processes, who have expertise but have never had the required relevant data set to deliver those use cases to the manufacturer, to deploy their own custom predictive analytic algorithms designed around their specific use cases. Again, you'll have to forgive me for kind of flying through those, but combining data across these multiple users of machinery, for example, allows manufacturers to improve algorithms to enable predictive maintenance in these other use cases. Sharing data can optimize asset performance, increase machine uptime and production quality, creating win-win situations for everybody involved in the manufacturing process. The time really is now. Data democratization is a tremendous challenge, but if achieved, the opportunities, as some of those that we've laid out in this presentation, for continuous improvement for all manufacturing lifecycle members will be far greater than ever before. So if you have any questions, you can email me, but thanks for allowing me to present.
Thanks, Graham. We're now opening the questions up to the audience. Feel free to use the raise your hand icon or send in questions in the question/chat box. I'll kick us off, and this question is for Graham. Can MachineMetrics integrate, what types of machine equipment can MachineMetrics integrate into?
That's a good question. Our customers are just frankly pushing the boundaries of what we even thought possible. We're plug and play with virtually any piece of discrete equipment. Turning, milling, stamping, fabrication, injection molding, cold heading, lasers, axes, grinders, welders, so on and so forth. And our customers are integrating anything from manual welders, belt sanders, paint lines. I would say that we're much more focused in discrete manufacturing versus process or batch.
Can you speak to how you extract data from legacy machines?
Yeah, it's actually, I was on a call with a customer that had significant issue with this yesterday, and it's important to be able to connect to all equipment. So our Edge platform runs, we have a digital and analog IO module that can be added on top that can, with a simple scripting language that's configurable through our web interface, you can leverage additional data points through current transducers, additional sensors. We've connected to IFM blocks. So even if you have a legacy piece of equipment that has no PLC, for example, or control, we can still pull robust, meaningful data from those pieces of equipment. But you can also add those data points on top of any PLC implementation, so you can get even more robust data from those pieces of equipment as well.
Great. This question's for you, Emily. How can individuals or organizations learn more about current MxD project calls and historic projects?
Great question. I would recommend looking at the MxD website. You can go to mxdusa.org. There we post a lot of information about our past projects, about our upcoming RFPs, and then you can also feel free to email me to find out anything you want about those projects. I'll put you in touch with the right people.
Great, thanks, Emily. That concludes it for our Q&A. Thank you all for attending and listening in. We will distribute the webinar with an email that will be released either this afternoon or early tomorrow. And then remember that this webinar was recorded and that will be posted on our website for you to share with friends or revisit at any time. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.